I silently followed her, glancing around occasionally. The streetlights were on, but it was still hard to see anything beyond 20 meters. If they were following us, they had a significant advantage. Kagome walked at a measured pace and didn't look back even once. It seemed to me that everything that needed to be said had been said. By starting another conversation, I'd only irritate her. Oh, you must be the grandfather. At the restaurant, on the stairs, sat a decrepit, seemingly 100-year-old man. Grandpa, Kagome shouted and ran to him. Why aren't you asleep? With effort, he raised his cloudy eyes to her. Apparently, he was asleep.
Kagome-chan, finally.
Did something happen?
Yes, this is for you.
He took a folder from somewhere behind his back and handed it to Kagome. What is this?
A man came in this evening and asked me to give this to Iwamura-san.
Kagome impatiently undid the string and quickly flipped through the thick folder. A small piece of paper fell out of it. I picked it up and read. Kagome-chan, I'm afraid I might be followed, so I'm sending you this copy of the documents. Be careful. Ichinose-san. Kagome said with deep respect in her voice.
What about your friend?
The old man, who was beginning to fall asleep again, suddenly grew more aware. Oh, yeah, he's Nico-san, a classmate. Nice to meet you. I made a demonstratively low bow. Grandpa, these are very important papers. We need to read them through. You should go to sleep already.
You always push me around like I'm a child.
He stood up, grunting, and walked inside. If you really want to look at these documents, we'll need light at the very least. Just don't get the wrong idea, she said indignantly, opened the door and invited me in with a gesture. A minute later, I was staying in Kagome's room. Even though it was barely larger than my attic, everything in it was unusually, to me, clean and orderly. There was no TV or VCR, and you'd be hard-pressed to find the space for them anyway. The furniture looked old, and it probably was. In general, I felt uncomfortable there, but couldn't understand why. Sorry, that's all I've got. Kagome seemed to have read my mind. No, it's okay. I just don't visit other people very often. Especially girls. I mean, maybe you don't get any weird ideas. Me too. Yeah, I hope I don't get weird ideas like that. Kagome sighed heavily, rolled her eyes, and sat down on the floor, throwing the folder onto the bed. Endless rows of digits and formulas, speed flow charts, calculations of orbits and trajectories. The papers looked like they were copied by an ancient machine with ink that had near dried out, which meant bits weren't legible and others looked more like hieroglyphs. Any ideas? Why are you asking me? You have to have better grades than me. What does that have to do with understanding this gibberish? You need a PhD to decipher it. Probably multiple. No ideas at all? Well, she said and started thinking. With a certain degree of confidence, I could say that they were going to launch something somewhere. Oh! Launch? Like a rocket? Yes. My father really was building rockets like Ichinose-san. Oh, wrong one. My father really was building rockets like Ichinose-san said, then that lines up. Yes, but my father is a chemist. Yeah, it's nuclear shit. Gotcha. Well, maybe they wanted to launch a rocket to mine resources from asteroids. Why the secrecy then? I don't know. I kept enthusiastically flipping through the documents. Enthusiastically, while understanding less and less every minute. Numbers and formulas danced before my eyes in bizarre circles, and soon I started hearing their mocking whispers in my head. Of course, it was stupid to hope that a normal school kid would understand what must have been years of work by dozens of scientists. What do you think the KGB knows about me? No idea. Why are you asking? It's just not every day you find out that you're being watched by people like them. You're fine with the Japanese government and the corporation spying on you, with them taking your father. I suddenly felt insulted on behalf of my motherland, even though I had nothing to do with the situation, neither in a bad nor good sense. I never thought they'd been watching me personally. Oh, if you put it that way. I grew embarrassed and carefully glanced at Kagome. She kept examining the papers carefully. You're acting as if this happens to you every other day. If I freak out too, we'll end up in the madhouse together. So I'm freaking out? She asked in a suddenly calm tone. Sometimes. I replied carefully. I probably have my reasons, don't I? Probably. The topic was too dangerous to pursue further. I yawned, stretched, and only then noticed that Kagome was snuffling peacefully with her hand under her head. Hey, I called to her quietly. She didn't wake up. What am I supposed to do now? I stood up to take a walk around the room, only to run into a problem. One step was enough to run into a wall. The clock read 2 at night. It really was late. I took another look at the heavy folder with the documents, hesitated a bit, and squatted down carefully, picked Kagome up and put her on the bed. She turned out to be much lighter than I had expected. I covered her with a blanket, took the papers, and walked out of the room. Her grandfather was sitting at one of the tables with a cup of tea in his hands.
Leaving already?
Kagome fell asleep. I said apologetically.
She's having a hard time.
All of a sudden his eyes became clear, but only for a moment.
Especially now with Shinji gone.
I understand.
I don't know what kind of relationship you two have, but I hope you'll take care of my granddaughter. I could tell right away you're a good guy. Cooking for other people so many years makes you understand them.
His words might have sounded a bit inappropriate at first, but considering their situation, I could understand the old man. He probably wanted Kagome to live like a normal teen instead of working in this dying restaurant just to make ends meet. I'll do my best. I got you, old man. I got you. Don't you worry about it. The taxi was bringing me home through a dark Tokyo flooded with electric lights. It seemed like the city hadn't changed at all in the last couple of weeks. It was sleeping, not even suspecting that somewhere deep in its core, something terrible was brewing. Was this project a threat to certain organizations? Countries? Continents? The entire planet? The solar system? The fucking galaxy? The universe? The multiverse? I paid the driver and spent a while staying in front of my house, looking into the darkness, pointlessly trying to pick out my silent watchers. It's hard to remember what you were dreaming about when you're snapped awake unceremoniously by the persistent ringing of a doorbell. Definitely wasn't Himitsu, since yesterday I hadn't locked the door from the inside. I didn't even have a chance to check what time it was, but the sun shining outside meant it was probably early morning. By the time I approached the door, the ring gave way to furious knocking. I'm coming. Standing in the doorway was an infuriated Kagome. Where are the documents? Did you take them? Mura-san, do you even know what time it is? By the way, what time is it? The documents! She repeated in a threatening tone, unceremoniously squeezed herself inside, pushing me aside with an elbow. I obediently followed her. Ha! Kagome exclaimed victoriously, having discovered the documents on the kitchen table. I'd been so tired yesterday that I went to bed immediately after tossing them there. It's 6 o'clock, for God's sake. I pleaded after checking the time. No wonder I felt so terrible. I managed to get to sleep for 3 hours, if that. Are trains running already? Or did you come on foot? Who allowed you to take the documents? I thought it'd be safer this way. You thought. Next time think harder. She grabbed the entire pile of papers and prepared to leave. Wait, listen to me for a moment. Kagome suddenly stopped, but she didn't say a word. The KGB people already knew where I was going yesterday, so to a degree I had nothing to fear. And they must be following you as well. You may have seen the courier deliver these papers to your restaurant. I spent a while thinking deeply about it, like she'd been asked to solve a Millennium Challenge. Either way, Ichinose-san sent them to me. I'm sure he would approve of my actions if he knew what we do now. Kagome didn't respond, so she returned to the table, carefully put the folder with the documents on it, and sat down on a chair. You could have told me instead of running away when I fell asleep. I didn't want to wake you up. I noticed. Well, do excuse me for... That's not what I meant. You put me in bed. Thank you. The nights are getting colder. I don't want you to get sick. I replied with embarrassment. It'll make you feel better. You can take the documents. You're right. I should have talked to you first. No, it's fine. The matter is that they're safe. We'll need them today. What for? I called an acquaintance of my father, and he agreed to meet with us. He's a scientist as well, so he'll likely get more out of these papers than either of us. That sounds good and all, but what about the surveillance? I'm confident nobody's been following me today. So was I until yesterday's visit from Marina. What made you think that she was telling the truth? What made me? I said slowly. And really, the thought had never crossed my mind. Just because you're paranoid doesn't mean you're not being followed. Is the opposite true? Could the seemingly obvious fact that I was being followed have made me paranoid? Why would she lie about something like that? Why wouldn't they be watching me? You think Soviet spies just casually walk around the streets in the middle of the day and follow anyone they want? I think the Japanese government might have something to say about that. Well, if you put it that way. It was probably stupid of me to assume Irina's and her colleagues' actions met no resistance. Why would they risk exposing themselves over some school kid? But she knew things she couldn't have learned otherwise. Kagome thought about it. Maybe they watched my restaurant and your house. Maybe our school as well, I don't know. But if they had an agent constantly following your every move, they wouldn't have enough men. It wasn't likely that Irina had brought an entire spy division with her from the USSR. Kagome was probably right about that. But you must know we have no way to make sure if any of that is true. If they really aren't watching us, we'll never find out. Could it be worse? She suddenly smirked and lazily leaned back in the chair. We might get killed. Is this really life? I think that as long as you're alive, healthy, and sane, it is. You've only got one life and shouldn't be so careless with it. Listen to this, philosophizing? I think that's how, yeah, go with that. Listen to this, existentialism. Kagome scoffed, walked to the fridge, opened it, and carefully checked its contents. What are you doing? Going to make breakfast. She suddenly froze, closed the door, and turned to me, and added with a smirk. Unless my lord would object, of course. I personally haven't eaten yet because I had to run to your place first thing in the morning. Your lord has no objections. I mocked her and left the kitchen to freshen up. Hell yeah. 10 minutes later, various plates, bowls, and pots had appeared on the table. It was a traditional Japanese breakfast, except for the fish I didn't have. Honestly, I found it hard to grasp where Kagome had managed to find the ingredients to cook all this in the first place. Truly a stone soup. Something not to your liking? What made you think that? Your expression. What expression? That one. She grumbled and started eating. Well, she was no worse a cook than Himitsu, as I'd already discovered. It's just that Himitsu hadn't made a simple breakfast into such a feast in a long while. Maybe Kagome just wanted to show off a bit. Everyone loves having their talents appreciated. It seemed to me she was extremely confident in her cooking. Everything's very tasty. I didn't expect... Ooh, you didn't expect? That's not what I wanted to... Forget it. Not any worse than your redhead friend's cooking? Himitsu? How do you know she cooks for me? You'd have to be blind not to notice that you bring a bento with you almost every day. I doubt you make them yourself. Fair enough. And no, not any worse. Thank you. I folded my hands in a praying gesture and gave her a demonstratively slow bow. You don't need to go that far. If you say so. So when and where will this acquaintance of yours be waiting for us? Ding dong. Are you sure that meeting at a train station in the morning during rush hour is a good idea? I spent the entire way on alert, trying to confuse any potential pursuers by choosing longer routes. Luckily, we had enough time for that. If they're really following us like you claim, then what does it matter? We won't be safe anywhere. You're right. I acknowledged her reluctantly. Kagome's father's acquaintance appeared right on time. He seemed to be around the same age as Ichinose, but looked more youthful, slim, fit, and energetic. His eyes still had a spark to them. I quickly decided that we should go to my favorite bar. It was close to the station, and there was little chance people would bother us there at this hour. The bartender was peacefully dozing off behind the counter and didn't even give me a welcoming shout, just greeted me politely. Nishimura-san, this is Nikolai. Kagome introduced me briefly. Pleasure to meet you. Likewise. Let's get to the point. I can see you've got a lot of material. Nishimura quickly flipped through the folder, then picked out a few sheets, took them out, and started to examine them more carefully. Well, well. Very interesting. I fidgeted impatiently in my seat, like a student in front of the teacher checking his exam paper. It was better not to hurry him, but waiting patiently turned out to be extremely difficult. Kagome, on the contrary, looked outwardly calm, but I was absolutely sure the same emotions were boiling inside of her. So you're saying that Ichinose-san gave this to you? Do you know each other? Yes, we've met at a few scientific conferences, but I wouldn't say we've personally acquainted. It wouldn't be wise to tell him what happened to Ichinose. To be honest, I had no idea what level of transparency was appropriate when talking with the man. All Kagome had told me was that we should show him the documents. I had no good reason to object. After all, I also wanted to find out more about all this, even though I was afraid to make a mistake. It's pretty strange that he gave such important documents to you, Kagome-chan. You see, my dad... She wasn't good at lying, especially lying about serious matters while looking the other person in the eye. So I had to step in as to not make him suspicious from the get-go. Come on, Kagome, there's nothing to be shy about. You see, Akira-san is in the hospital. Nothing serious, I hope. Nishimura asked with a sincere sympathy in his voice. Nothing serious, it's just acute pancreatitis, but the doctors insisted on hospitalization. I had no idea I had pancreatitis. Cursing myself for the failed improvisation, but Nishimura continued. Although we haven't talked in a while, it's also why I was surprised by your call this morning. Sorry about that. That's fine. It's not like I'm busy at the moment. Life gets pretty boring in retirement. Use a bit of a shake-up. Seemed like we got lucky. He spent some more time studying the papers before I finally ran out of patience. Nishimura-san, have you figured anything out? He took his eyes off the documents and looked at me intently over his glasses. Oh yes, a lot. Except for one thing. How did this material end up in your hands? Is that important? Kagome asked with irritation. It's important to me. To make sure that you aren't trying to drag me into something bad. Not to mention, I heard that these efforts were going to be discontinued. He carefully looked first at me, then at Kagome, like a judge waiting for a response from the defendants. We're just asking for your help because we can't figure this thing out ourselves. No wonder. Suddenly his voice trembled, and an expression of awe appeared on his face. As if those weren't simple paper sheets he was holding. At the very least, the bleeding icon of the Divine Mother. This is a scientific breakthrough that would push us years, maybe even decades ahead. And what's this breakthrough about? First, answer my question. I looked at Kagome. She was sitting there with an expression of stubborn determination on her face. It was clear that she wasn't about to tell him anything, even under torture. I wasn't so radical about it, but I didn't want to argue with her in front of Nishimura. We told you. Ichinose-san gave them to us. Indeed. And where is he? Nishimura-san, is that important? Of course it is. Do you understand that I am discussing groundbreaking scientific discoveries with 2 high school students early in the morning in some mediocre cafe? What next? Will it turn out that this is in fact your work and I'm sitting in front of 2 future Nobel Prize winners? Kagome didn't know whether he had worked at Kobayashi Corporation before, but Nishimura surely looked very agitated. These papers, he leaned forward and covered his mouth with his hand, are valuable enough to kill for. Nishimura-san, you're exaggerating. With every remaining bit of composure, I was doing my best to look calm and speak normally, but deep inside of me was growing a feeling that we wouldn't get anything from him. At least, not with this approach. Would you excuse us for a minute? I stood up and grabbed Kagome by the arm, so quickly that she didn't have time to object. We stepped aside. I'll have to tell him everything. Don't even think about it. You're the one who asked him to come, and now you're backing off? To be honest, I don't know him that well. Then what the hell are we doing here? Do you have a better plan? We were talking loudly enough to wake up the bartender, who had already wiped the dust from his eyes and was looking at us carefully from behind the bar. I think that if we're already here, we should see this to the end, I said in a quieter voice. Fine, but if something goes wrong, it's your fault. We returned to the table, but Nishimura didn't even seem to notice us, glued to the documents. Nishimura-san? Huh? He came to his senses and looked at me. So what have you decided? Have you ever heard about the project? I decided to try and work up to it. First Nishimura's eyes bulged, then he turned pale. The project? Of course, I should have realized immediately, with Ichinose-san and especially Akira-san's involvement in this research. It seems suspiciously familiar to me right away. You know what, children? I don't want anything to do with this, and I advise you the same. With these words, he stood up and all but ran for the exit. Well, so much for a talk. I sighed and turned to Kagome. Her face was contorted into a grimace of impotent anger, and only the grinding of her teeth indicated she hadn't turned to a statue. Got what you wanted? Told him everything? What's the result? We decided together. I tried to offer an awkward excuse. Yeah, right. Fine, let's calm down and think. Kagome scoffed and turned away. Can't say we achieved nothing at all. What have we achieved? That he's about to go to the corporation and tell them everything? Did you see how scared he was just from the mention of the project? I don't think he's going anywhere near Kobayashi Corporation's offices. Then he'll tell, I don't know, the police? Tell them what? The 2 school kids are skipping class and reading some nerdy books in a cafe? The entirety of Japan has maybe a dozen people who can understand what's written here. Dozen schmuzzin. Think I'm wrong? Should we ask our physics teacher? I'm not suggesting anything. Kagome looked offended, or rather upset. She probably didn't actually believe I'd done something wrong, but her pride made her look for a scapegoat even here. Aren't you a bit too worried about these papers? Am I? The KGB has the originals of Ichinose-san's documents. I don't know how valuable they are to the Russians, but we can at least hope they wouldn't hunt us down over them. And why is that? Why would you kill someone for information you already know? So that no one else can get to it? Kagome was right, and in trying to calm her down, I'd let my guard down. I ended up driving myself into a dead end. I was desperately pushing away the thought that there was no way out. With every passing day, I found it harder and harder to ignore the realization that the trap was about to shut close. My life had taken a wrong turn ever since Catherine came back. First that note, then the calls, then the corporation, the KGB, and now Kagome and her father's kidnapping, and these documents had to at least be the blueprints for a flying saucer. Do you disagree? I didn't know how to answer. Of course, I felt sorry for Kagome and genuinely wanted to help her, but I had no personal stake in this situation. My father was long dead, and had suffered from an excess of patriotic sentiment, and didn't want to be exposed to unnecessary risks for any other reason. My parents' death most likely wasn't an accident, but I had enough sense to understand one thing. A high schooler could only take his revenge on the world in manga. Did Kagome understand that? Sometimes it feels like you're ready to do anything. To get my father back? Yes, I am. That's not exactly what I mean. I think the ends justify the means for you. Oh, God, don't get all fancy. What if the situation was the exact opposite and you were in charge of Kobayashi Corporation? Wouldn't you also utilize any method to achieve your goals like Kobayashi Jun does? Could've, would've, should've. I'm not accusing you of anything. I just want to point out that sometimes it's wise to stop. You're saying this like I'm about to go bomb their office. Would you, given the chance? Kagome scoffed hutfully and turned her back to me. You use some beer right about now. The silence dragged on for too long, and I couldn't come up with anything better. Go ahead. Her permission stopped me better than any prohibition. What do you want from me? Absolutely nothing. Then we wouldn't be sitting here. You can go. Just leave the documents. And to think that this morning she seemed to finally be warming up to me. Had it just been my imagination? I really want to help you, but you're just not letting me. If you intend just to charge ahead alone against the world, then it's my duty to inform you that that's stupid. You know, you're right. Kagome suddenly grew even angrier. You really don't need to be here. Sorry for dragging you into all this, Niko-san. I can handle my problems myself. You don't need to subject yourself to danger. Here we go again. Am I wrong? I found it hard to answer that question, even to myself. Objectively, I couldn't say that I had any good reason to risk my life for Iwamura. What about risking it for myself? Was it that important for me to find out the truth about my parents' death? Of course, Kagome's persistence could help there, but the road to hell is paved with good intentions. The price of the truth is often unreasonably high. And the easiest way to talk about that price is to sit in an uncomfortable chair in your office, poring over some philosophical or historical work. Meanwhile, I had to make a decision here and now. Come on. As if there's a choice to be made here. Yeah, I'm a fucking supporter. Well, since we're on topic, you weren't the only one with a stake in this whole thing. My parents died because of the corporation, remember? I'm glad you remember. What's that supposed to mean? Her words got to me. Maybe finding out the truth about my parents' death wasn't the only reason I wanted to help her so much. It means I'm starting to think that you've got way too comfortable in your giant house, surrounded by cute girls who can't get enough of you for whatever reason. And with all this comfort, you've forgotten who your real enemies are. Her words, her facial expression, body language, and the imperceptible aura around her, all of it betrayed a burning desire for revenge. Was her father's kidnapping the only reason for it? I couldn't imagine a hatred like that coming about in just a couple of weeks. Once again, I am ready to help you with finding your father, because it would also allow me to learn more about my past. But I'm not going to declare a holy war on capitalism as personified by the Kobayashi family. You could turn any serious topic into a joke. She suddenly smiled and relaxed. I could feel the tension subside. So it's a deal? For today. Gotta start somewhere. By the way, do you want to eat? It's too early for lunch, but if it's your treat. Kagome responded calmly. Well, sure, I guess, I said reluctantly. Not that I didn't want to spend the money, I just didn't expect her to be so casual about it. The bartender appeared at our table as if by magic. What is thy desire? Good old bartender. I kept picking at my teeth with a toothpick. Do you come here often? Occasionally. It just seems that you and the owner know each other well. I wouldn't say well, exactly. He's not an acquaintance I'd be proud of. Why? Let's say he can be naggy and very pushy at times. A typical Russian trait. You're saying I nag? Sometimes. Well, that's one complaint I never thought I'd hear. I guess it's just that nobody told you before. Maybe they haven't because I'm not actually naggy. Or because they didn't want to upset you. So what? You're the only one brave enough to tell it like it is. Sorry. Kagome smiled unapologetically, cutely, and even childishly. Anyway, I gotta go. Thank you for the meal. By the way, can I take the documents? Yeah, sure, I replied, having realized I hadn't addressed it earlier. When she left, I ignored the naggy bartender, who immediately appeared at my table, paid the bill, and returned home to get some more sleep.